Don't talk to me right now. That's what Oscar Piastri said to his own race engineer in the middle of what should have been the best afternoon of his season. Not to a rival, not to a stranger who wronged him on track, to his own team. And hours later, the man who runs that team went in front of the cameras and explained the decision that provoked it, calmly, clinically, without a hint of apology. Pay attention to how calm he was. It comes back. Hungary was shaping up to be Piastri's race to lose, and for a long stretch of the afternoon, it looked exactly like that. He'd snatched the lead from his own teammate at the start with a clean switchback move, held it through the opening stint, and was given the preferential pit strategy as the lead McLaren on track. Pitting first, ahead of Lando Norris, in what should have been the standard order of operations for whoever's out front. If you want the stories the paddock doesn't put in the press releases, subscribe right now, and drop a comment telling me which country you're watching from. Because what happens next probably reads differently depending on whether you've ever watched your own team make a call that worked against you. Here's where it turns. Piastri pitted from the lead. What his own pit wall didn't fully account for was what he'd be pitting into. A stretch of lapped traffic, backmarkers fighting their own battles further down the order, cars that hadn't been cleared out of the way in time. Piastri came out of the pits straight into that mess, lost time he never should have lost, and while he was untangling himself from cars a lap down, Carlos Sainz's Williams clipped him at turn 2. The stewards would later rule Sainz wholly responsible for that specific collision, but the contact only happened because Piastri was stuck in traffic his own team had put him into. That's the moment the radio message landed. His race engineer, Tom Stallard, told him, "Oscar, that's Sainz that's cost us that." Piastri's reply wasn't really about Sainz at all. "Oh mate, just don't talk to me now." Nice of you guys to factor that one in, by the way, thanks. Was Piastri talking about the crash, or about the pit call that put him in the crash's path in the first place? Did McLaren actually fail to anticipate the traffic, or is this the kind of unlucky break that happens to whoever pits first regardless of planning? And if it really was unavoidable, why did the team's own driver sound less angry at Sainz than at the wall that made the call? Here's the empilhamento worth sitting with before we get to what Stella actually said. This isn't a driver complaining in a post-race press conference days later, once the emotion has cooled and the media training has kicked back in. This is real-time, mid-race on team radio, the rawest channel there is, a driver telling his own engineers to stop talking to him in language that doesn't survive broadcast standards uncut. While Piastri was fuming, Norris was on the same channel a lap ahead, insisting to his own side of the pit wall that he was faster than his teammate and shouldn't have to sit behind him in dirty air. McLaren's response was to pit Piastri and leave Norris out longer on old tires, a call Norris himself all but demanded in the moment. It worked. Norris came out ahead net of the stops and never gave the position back. So Piastri's afternoon didn't end with him simply losing the lead to bad luck. It ended 30-something laps later with a gearbox failure that took him out of the race entirely while running second. What started as a beautifully executed opening lap ended in retirement. And somewhere in between, his own team's strategy call put him directly into the path of the contact that cost him the race lead in the first place. Speaking to Sky Sports F1 in the paddock after the podium, McLaren team principal Andrea Stella was asked the obvious question. Did Piastri have reason to feel aggrieved by how the team had handled the sequence? Stella didn't hesitate, and he didn't reach for comfort. "I think Oscar will have already realized there is no reason to be upset," he said. "It's enough for him to take a look at the race trace, see that Lando gained the time thanks to his pace, and to some extent, this loss with the backmarkers is just an unlucky situation." Unlucky situation, not a mistake, not something the team should have planned around better. Just bad luck, filed and closed. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is exactly the kind of story you'll want to be here for. Because when a boss chooses which version of events becomes the official one, that choice always tells you more about the team than the incident itself does. Here's the caso espejo that actually proves something. Because on its own, unlucky situation is just a phrase a team boss uses to move on quickly. What makes it worth examining is what happened to the two drivers on either side of that same call. Norris got the benefit of the doubt and the preferential tire life. Piastri got the traffic and the collision. Both are McLaren drivers, on the same strategy sheet in the same race, and one of them walked away with a maiden win of the season while the other walked away, calling his own team something close to an insult over open radio. When the same call produces opposite outcomes for two drivers under one roof, and the boss calls it unlucky for the one who lost out, that's not a neutral read of the data. That's a read that happens to land in the winner's favor. What was Piastri actually supposed to do in that moment? Refuse the early pit call and risk losing more time to an undercut from behind? Or take the stop as instructed and trust that the pit wall had accounted for the traffic he'd be pitting into? Those were his only two options, and the team chose for him. Then explained the outcome afterward as simply unlucky, rather than as a call that might have been made differently. Let's talk about what this actually cost him in real terms, because an unlucky situation undersells it considerably. Piastri was running second, in position to challenge for a genuine result when the gearbox failure ended his afternoon with 14 laps still to go. Before that failure, he had already lost the net race lead to Norris through the contact and the pit sequence combined. This wasn't a driver who had a mediocre day and finished mid-pack. This was a driver who led the race, got put into traffic by his own team's timing, got hit by a backmarker as a direct consequence, and then had his car break before he could even try to recover the position on merit. Now, 3 weeks before any of this happened, Piastri had said something worth remembering here, that he'd driven better across the stretch of the season than he had to this same point last year, back when he was deep in a genuine title fight with this same teammate. He said it quietly, without controversy, just stating where he felt his form was. It's a strange thing to hold next to a race where his own team's handling of a pit sequence became the deciding factor in his result, not his driving. The honest steelman deserves airtime here, because Stella's position isn't indefensible on its face. Racing incidents happen. Traffic is genuinely unpredictable, blue flag systems can and do fail. And in this specific race, there was a documented systems fault affecting the automatic blue flag panels, which may have contributed to Sainz not being fully aware of Piastri's approach. If the tools that are supposed to clear traffic out of the way weren't functioning correctly, that's a legitimate mitigating factor. Nobody can pin entirely on McLaren's strategy call. That's a defensible position. It is also not the position that survives sitting Norris's outcome next to Piastri's. If the traffic was purely bad luck, it was bad luck that happened to land on exactly the driver who wasn't given the preferential strategy call that race, and worked out precisely in favor of the one who was. Here's the honest version of the question, because I'm not going to pretend this is settled when it isn't. Would McLaren have called this unlucky with the same flat certainty if it had been Norris stuck in that traffic and Piastri who came out ahead? Nothing in Stella's comments answers that directly. It's not proven either way, but it's exactly the question anyone watching two teammates get two different outcomes from the same strategic decision is entitled to ask. Zoom out from this one Sunday, because this isn't really about one pit stop gone wrong. It's about how a team with two drivers still capable of fighting each other for position handles the moments when a single strategic call can only fully benefit one of them. Last year, at this same team, similar moments produced what became known as the papaya rules, an attempt to keep things artificially fair between two competing drivers. This year, with the championship picture settled around Norris rather than an open fight between the two of them, Stella's answer to a strategic disagreement wasn't to intervene or promise a correction next time. It was to point at a spreadsheet and call the outcome unlucky. That's a shift worth naming plainly, and Piastri's own reaction on the radio suggests he noticed it too. So tell me, if you were Oscar Piastri right now, do you push back publicly on your own team's read of the situation? Or do you let it go and trust the same pit wall with the next big strategic call of the season? There's no comfortable answer here. Pick one. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is the exact kind of story you'll want to be here for the next time this team has to make a call between these two drivers. Zandvoort and Monza are next after the summer break. Both circuits where clean strategic execution matters as much as raw pace, and where McLaren will have two drivers again capable of fighting each other for position on given weekends. Whatever call gets made next time one driver's strategy comes at the other's expense will tell us whether Hungary was simply an unlucky one-off, or the first sign of how this team handles it when both of its drivers matter again. This story is not over, and when the next contentious pit call happens, you'll want to already have this file open until the next one.